Erica Larson again, following up with the video on the case study, um, addressing thoughts on the case study, my thoughts on the case study. Mr. Stevens, as the administrator, is reasonably in charge of general procedures. However, it appears that he takes on duties in addition to what he should be in charge of as the administrator, and so maybe he needs to learn to delegate. For example, he appointed himself as the event coordinator, essentially through the duties that he was performing or not performing. Um, he also took responsibility for speaking for the PTA whenever he should have been only consulting with the PTA. I feel sad that students are essentially losing money as a result of this because this money goes to benefit students and it's missing. And if there's missing money in this situation, are there other funds that are missing as a result of similar types of leadership or management? As far as values, it is important to take responsibility where it's due. Mr. Stevens did err in not taking or not having procedures and or following them. He could investigate the situation, and depending on how he investigates it, he could risk accusing Mrs. Bowman of stealing the money, which maybe she did, but also maybe she didn't. Um, but really, investigating it is really a symptom of his oversight. So he needs to take responsibility for what he didn't do, and it could negatively impact relations to investigate. So he just needs to really be careful how he proceeds. And again, I think that the way he proceeds is probably maybe more important, but definitely as important as if he does decide to investigate. But it's also important to maintain high expectations. I addressed this earlier on how this impacts student learning and culture in the school. So I don't feel like this can just be ignored. Regardless of what he didn't do too, if somebody took money, it still isn't right. So his lack of doing what he should have done doesn't excuse somebody else's behavior that's inappropriate. And I did outline clear procedures and steps to prevent the future problems, but there are still some unresolved issues. How should the missing tickets and money be handled? Should he go ahead and investigate? Um, I think it's essential that when he decides this and how he goes about it, he keeps maintaining good relationships in mind. It did say in the case study that he does currently have good relationships with parents, and I think it's important that he preserve this for various reasons, but also continuing to work together well with parents at the school that does highly depend on parent volunteerism and parent involvement. Another question, should Mrs. Bowman be allowed to volunteer in a position in which she is handling money again? You know, she has been a consistent and faithful supporter over time. It's not fair to make assumptions. It's very suspect that she might have taken the money, but we don't know that. And again, if we improve processes, then probably future problems will not occur because procedures will be in place to prevent that. But again, what are the consequences if she did steal the money? And we don't know that she did. So, it's just there's a lot of unknowns. And I think that learning more will help us to decide how to proceed. And how will we recover the money that's missing? Because again, this does impact students. Furthermore, as I mentioned, I would be inclined to talk to Mrs. Bowman and just talk about the reported torn tickets and okay, so where are the tickets, and or I would probably just say, hey, this is what happened. We didn't have the tickets and or we didn't have the money, so we just need to make sure things balance and trying to understand what happened, kind of thing. And it's possible that through talking to her, the situation will be easily resolved. Depending on district norms, I would possibly be in contact with the district office as well. And regardless of how my conversation with Mrs. Bowman goes, the proposed changes are necessary as stated to prevent future problems. I think another thing that I didn't put on the presentation, if Mrs. Bowman admits to taking the money, then we have stealing money did occur, but she came clean. If she doesn't admit to it, then we really have no evidence that she stole it. Um, it's just really kind of tricky, and we need to, I feel like, investigate the situation, but depending on how the investigation goes, will impact how Mr. Stevens should proceed. And again, I think that consulting with district office in this situation is going to be really important. As far as the standards, how does Mr. Stevens or the school leader promote efficient and effective school management? Well, following the outlined plan and related steps would be efficient and effective from both a labor and a fund standpoint. They are based on best practice according to our textbook, and they would involve appropriate checks and balances. So we're not doing unnecessary things, but we're ensuring that we are being thorough to prevent future problems and to maximize school and student resources. Social learning for all students. I think this was kind of covered in a previous slide a little bit, but if we clearly communicate best practice and that we have high expectations for students, if they see that throughout the school, that these are our expectations, and then also that we're enforcing them, this communicates and sets school norms. It shows students that we have high expectations and we do expect the right thing, and that if this doesn't happen, investigation will occur, and that it will be fair. I think it's important not to be punitive, but to be fair and to demonstrate this to students so that they can learn these factors in life, and also that we know that they can carry out this level of ethical behavior and that we expect it. As far as academic learning, I think that this could be a good time to present to the students the situation very generally. Like, hey, often there are recommendations in how to um, carry out these duties, and we don't really have procedures in place. So we want to write procedures. We could have students research. We could have them give input. They could help carry out the improvement steps, like they could write manuals. They could write the abbreviated signs that would be up. And then that would help them to learn why these steps are important. It would help them to learn in carrying out such a project, and it would also help them feel pride in what they've done as they see their work throughout the school. It really would be an amazing project for students. So, if you were in Mr. Stevens' shoes, how would you handle this? I'm really curious to hear what other people in the class um, thought of the case study and what their recommendations are.